And then we pioneered a new church. We called it pioneering back in the 90s. We pioneered a decade of harvest. I know the decade of harvest gets a lot of knocks, but if you look at the top giving churches in America, half the list are decade of harvest churches. So there's a lot of wonderful things that came out of the decade of harvest. So we were part of that, planted Harvest Church, pastored by Perry Calavig. It's a church that's 29 years old now. We were there 11 years, from age 27 to 38. And the Lord blessed it back in the 90s. You know, I'm an 80s youth pastor. How many were youth pastors in the 80s? You know, it was a simple life back then. We had a guitar, we sang some Bob Kilpatrick songs back then, you know, in my life will be glorified. You know, there was no issues in the 80s. Well, there was one issue. I tell people, for 10 years in the 1980s, we only had one theological concern. It was our Council of Jerusalem. It consumed us for a decade. And it was a theological impasse that was facing the American church that we could not figure out for 10 years. And we wrestled with that question, and that question was Amy Grant a Christian? Can you sing El Shaddai in yoga pants? That was the big concern of the American church. Am I right? How many 80s youth pastors? We had no technological advancement. We started the decade with overheads. By the way, whatever happened to those millions of people that served as overhead changers? They faced the congregation in a chair like this and sit there and worship the Lord facing, and then they would change the overheads. And you really judged the church not based on its website, because there was no website, on how organized the overheads were. You could really tell everything you wanted to know about that pastor's leadership by the nice bin. And we ended the decade 10 years later with better overheads. We put cardboard borders around them and had nicer bins. But millions of people have vanished from the earth. How many of you back in the day, you were groomed and your anointing and all that was refined? You were a worship overhead projector, slide changer person. Let me see your hand. Wow. You're like the millions of kids in churches in the 1990s that were in human videos and played demons. How many kids got saved playing demons? Because you can come to a youth group and get involved immediately. Oh, in the human video, we just see another demon. And that's how they found the Lord. I guarantee you. But with the deadly human videos, it's like, whatever happened to all those demons? I don't know. They went away with the overhead projector turn and changed everything. Fascinating. Did anybody ever turn an overhead projector slide and play a demon in a human video? Have you ever, anybody here? Look at that, there's one of you. But, you know, so we were there from age 27 to 38 in Elk Grove, and then we went to one of the great historic churches. We pastored at age 38. We found ourselves as the senior pastors of a 4,000 member church in Grand Rapids, Michigan that was coming out of the Brownsville revival. Pastor Wayne Benson had been there 25 years. We followed Wayne Benson. I was 38. I don't even listen to people who are 38. You know, I feel like, we were that young? What were they thinking? I'm kidding. But we were 38, we found ourselves in charge of this, you know, $11 million budget and 75 full-time staff and this 5,000 seat sanctuary. This ministry at age 38, we were there for 5 years and had a wonderful time. It was different than church planting. Took this historic institutional church, and it really prepared me for my role as serving as president of North Central. That's where all of those conduits were laid. But it was a wonderful experience. And then we went and became overseers of church planting on the national CMN team. We've been very involved in church planting the last 13 years, planting Real Life Church out west. And then, of course, took the role at the university. I want to say one thing about the school right now. I forgot to mention last night. One of the great things that the school announced this last year, and I wish you could have been there last September to see what happened. When I went there a year ago last summer of 17, I said, Lord, I'm not a pastor anymore. How do we be generous? We don't give to missions. How do I do this as a president? Lord dropped on my heart. We've been very active in AGWM World Missions, and I have family that are AGWM missionaries. And the Lord dropped an idea on our hearts that we would take a very bold move. Now, we inherited an operational deficit budget at that point in time. The school was trending well, but I inherited a $1.2 million operational deficit. And so in the heart of that, the Lord said, I want you to make a way for all the AGWM dependent kids around the world, because we just heard of a missionary family that was coming off the field with 4 kids, had been on the field for 17 years in Malaysia or somewhere in that region of the earth because of college. They couldn't, how are kids going to go to college? And they had this terrible anxiety about their kids in college. And because you know how AGWM is set up, no secondary job and all that. So the Lord said those students around the world are not going to come with a discount. They're going to come, they're going to attend at North Central University tuition free. And we made the announcement last December. And we usually get 5 or 6, most of our schools get 5 or 6 missionary kids. And most get like 25% or 50% discount. We said, well, they're going to come tuition free to honor their parents' lives as career missionaries. And we're going to remove the burden right now off those families and keep those missionary families on the field. And we're going to bless them. And so it was a monumental decision. And I will tell you this, we ended the year at North Central with a $237,000 surplus instead of a $1.3 million deficit. And we'll bless the school. So if you know of any missionaries around the world, AGWM, career missionaries with dependent children, they can attend North Central University tuition free. And so spread that word. It's been a great blessing. And they're the greatest young leaders in the world. You should meet them. And so thank you for blessing the school, helping the school. When you give directly to North Central, you can give directly to the AGWM scholarship. And you will directly help those kids and keep those families on the mission field. We had families say, we can stay on the field now because of this. And so it's that big a deal to missions to provide that for their students. So just want to let you know that. So anyway, we're going to talk about us a little bit, him, this, that, ministry, marriage, all this stuff. I want to share my favorite picture of Karen, though, if I can. This is my favorite picture of my beautiful bride. That is circa 1964. She's born in 62. I love the bent wrist. I love the feminine gleam in her eye. I love the page boy haircut. I love the matching person dress. Her mom had it's the gleam in the eye. It's the gleam. I think the Lord has shown her something. I think she's seen something, even as a tiny child, about the future, and she's seen it, and it's brought that gleam. I think this is what the Lord has shown her about her future. Next picture, if you will, please. So. That's one of the stronger laughters across all of America. I love the twisty velvet shorts. I love the little socks. My brother's not too happy about his sweater. That's Easter at the Fresno Airport, 1964. I love the haircut. My dad worked in the timber and lumber industry, and he used to go to the mountains and cut the trees down with a chainsaw. And he also used to give me a haircut with that same chainsaw. But I will tell you this, you put a pair of skinny jeans on that kid, and that is a modern worship leader. That's the hair of a worship pastor right now. We have that haircut all over North Central right now. Karen, anything you want to say about that beautiful shot right there?
No, just adorable.
And then we grew into this about 18 years later. This is when we met, and this is when we fell in love. The next picture, if you will, this was our engagement photo right there. About 80 pounds of hair on our head right there.
What were you thinking?
I don't know what we're thinking, but a lot of people say, you guys look like Donnie and Marie. And I go, yeah, but you can't tell which one's Marie. That's the problem with that. And so somehow through all that, here we sit in Kearney, Nebraska. After this, are you keeping time here too? So we got.
Yeah, we haven't even started.
Yeah, here we go. So our lives, we're going to talk about the marriage context, but it's always framed in the pressures in the incubator of leadership and making it through two dynamics: the dynamic of marriage and the dynamic of leadership and the dynamic of ministerial leadership, because what we do in this room is not based on expertise. I can rise at the top of my career at Apple or some industry through expertise. This, though, is based on something different. It's based on being an example, not an expert. And there's a different set of pressures for the example than there is for the expert. We have to have expertise, but people are really looking. There's no other job in the world in which our life as pastors is measured by the countenance of our teenager on a Sunday afternoon at the mall, or Saturday afternoon at the mall. Your teenager walks by somebody from the church, they say hi to your teenager doesn't say hi back, they go, whoa, look at that attitude, well that's lousy, well that's their kid, well they must be bad parents, they're bad parents, they're bad pastors, you're bad, all because your teenager on a Saturday didn't smile at them. Who else has that job? In which we're judged for unbelievable things. It's microscopic, it's because we're called to be examples. So here we are trying to figure all this out over time, staying optimistic, keeping our house clean enough so that people are inspired, but dirty enough so they know we can relate. How do you do that? And so this is a crazy calling on our life. But understand, it's because we're called to be exemplars, templates, examples, not simply experts. And because of that, we have very unique pressures. Now, just whether we're in the ministry or not, we're all going to go through 3 stages. First 10 years of marriage and leadership, life, let's say you get married at 20. We got married at 19 and 20. First 10 years, it's all about the firsts. It's been about 10 years of firsts. Lots of discoveries. First car, first kid, first job, first ministry. Tons of firsts. Lots of adrenaline during that decade of firsts. Then you go through about 30 years of the sames. From about age 30 to 60. In your career, in your marriage, your ministry, it's the same pot roast on Tuesday night. It's the same TV shows. It's the same summer trips. It's the same this. You go through about 30 years of the sames. And then the research proves at about age 60, for the next 20 to 25 years, and you can go beyond that, but you go through a period of what's called the lasts. You buy your last Buick, you take the last trip to the family farm. You start doing things for the last time in that window. And most divorces happen, and most people abandon leadership, and most people enter into futility instead of destiny. They deteriorate, no longer develop, at around age 45. 45 really is a critical, we call it a midlife crisis in the world, but really it is a marker that most people deteriorate north of 45, they no longer develop. Now that doesn't need to be the case, but it is the reality of the human life sequence. And so how do we develop in marriage and in life north of 45 and continue to develop? And how do we make it through the sames? You know, some of you are married the first 10 years, it's all about the first. Some of you are in the heart of your sames. We've been married now for 37 years. Right? Yeah, 37 years. And so we're like moving toward that window of 60 and beyond. We're next birthdays will both be 57. And it'll be fascinating. I mean, we still feel young, vibrant, vital. But I'm certain that next window, now as grandparents, there's going to be some last going on. Even like with our parents. You know, we have 2 parents who passed away, and both of our living parents are not doing well. My mom is in a memory care facility. Her dad's in the hospital as we speak with some heart issues. So we're going to go through that stage. So this is all about learning how to, understanding your stage, and understanding, especially most of this room are in the sames, and how to reattach and have what I call a second salvation somewhere in this window that reattaches you to the innocence, the first love, the deeds you did at first, especially in the marriage context. So does a marriage naturally deteriorate over time, or can a marriage improve with time? Huge question. Great Latin word called magis. Magis is a great word. The Catholics use this word a lot, but I think evangelicals need to use this word magis. It's a Latin word that means not better than you, but better than before. So we don't compare ourselves to one another, because when I compare myself to you, I lose my way. Magis is this Latin idea of I am better than I was before, but I'm not better than you. I'm not competing against you. I am going after my full potential. So we want to see our lives better than before, not simply better than you. Is it possible for something broken to become something whole and stronger than it was before it was broken? Can your marriage recover from a world of secrets and separate rooms? And so we're going to talk a little about that. And when a marriage is in trouble, the couple immediately tries to discover some hidden mystery, rather than committing to the simplicity for how human relationships actually flourish. So you got to really pursue simplicity, not some hidden mystery. And then your spouse is a person before they are your spouse. All the same person rules apply. So how you treat people at work to make a sale, then you can't come home and treat your spouse differently, because they're a person. So person rules apply in all of our relationships. So Karen, talk about some basic building blocks.
So we have over the years developed some basic building blocks, some that we didn't actually try to do. We just discovered as we were putting them into practice, or we came to a crossroads. So one of them is called the no yell zone. I want you to repeat after me. Say, yell no. No, you got to do it with your hand. Yell no.
Yell no.
All right? I grew up...
That's as edgy as we get right there, okay?
Yell no.
Yell no.
Maybe something you want to know. Growing up in my home, I never heard my parents yell. And I never noticed that until Scott and I were married.
Well, premarital class,
yeah, we were married.
you said that, and I thought you were a freak. Like,
Yeah.
I heard my parents scream every day.
Yeah, so he came from a yelling and screaming background, and I came from a quiet background. And so that was just one of the many opposites that we came out of. Okay, so, but this was a significant one. So how that played out in our marriage is that he would, now he has what I call his preaching voice, that he just lives at. I mean, he just preaches all the time. So does all my kids. We all have this loud, you know, they have your inside voice, and we call it our preaching voice, is the loud voice. And he would, you know, as we would start to escalate in a conversation, he would start with his preaching voice, and what it would do to me is it would kind of shut me down, because I wasn't used to, you know, maneuvering around yelling when it came to conflict like that.
No, we didn't.
No, he didn't scream.
Thank you. I was preaching.
So he would be...
I was preaching open air overseas.
But we just decided that we would adopt my side of the family and learn how to communicate without raising our voices. And so that's what we did. We decided that we would become Yell No marriage. And we have really operated that, and it's been really exciting to hear as our kids and are now adults, and they've been questioned on different things, and we've actually heard our kids say, because I remember saying, I never heard my parents yell. They have now said it to other people, I've never heard my parents yell, and that is, there's nothing greater than hearing your kids say something like that, meaning, okay, I've done something right, you know, because how many feel like sometimes you just like, am I ever going to get this right? So we just developed the no yell zone. Another thing is that we realize that we don't think alike, but we can think together. And that is huge for us because, like I said, Scott asked me a question. He goes, do you think we're becoming more alike as we get older? And I said, no. Because we're not. We are the most opposite people you would ever come in contact with. When you say that phrase opposite attracts, we should be on the front cover of the magazine, because he's a total extrovert, I'm a complete introvert. He loves to be with people, I need to go and be by myself. You know, he loves to talk, I love to listen. I'm a quiet person. I'm never going to clamor for the microphone. And so in that, we've had to really figure out how to, for me to continue to grow and not be overshadowed by him, because I'm okay. You know what? I'm flexible, I'm phlegmatic, just laid back. He's choleric, he's out there. So we have had to really learn how to help grow each other in that. Specifically, we have had to learn how to really grow and enlarge my tent in that place where I am just more relaxed and I'm good, you know, just good. So we've had to really learn how to, or understand that we don't have to think exactly alike, but we can think together. And we adopt that phrase, you know, the best idea wins. Sometimes I'm going to have the greatest idea, sometimes he's going to have the best idea. Sometimes the idea is going to stretch me, and sometimes it's going to, you know, bring him back in a little bit. And so we don't have to think alike, but we think together. And have to understand also that we both bring something to the table. So he is the wild stallion out there. He's the visionary. I'm the practical, play it out. Does anybody can understand that dynamic in a marriage? I'm the one that'll play out his, you know, what he's thinking. He's out there doing the thing. I'm raising the kids. I'm taking up the slack at home. All of those things. Just understanding the part that we play in the marriage, what I bring to the table, what he brings to the table, and being okay with that. But not letting that stop you from growing. So there's a real balance there, is that I'm not just going to say, well, this is just all I can do. No, I'm always growing. I mean, no, every season in your life is preparation for the next season. So don't ever just take a season off. I'm just going to be the one at home, and I'm just going to take care of the kids, or this is what's happening. I mean, I tend to think about what the women do as opposed to what the men do. You're always growing, and so you never take a season off in your life. Number 3 is I am called to make my husband happy, not holy. Yeah. I don't think that really needs a lot of explanation. But you can't change your spouse.
That was a major shift when we realized we can't change each other.
Yeah, because he comes at life a completely different way. He does his devotions a completely different way than I do. I'm real scheduled. I'm like morning. I'm up at 5 a.m. He's a night person. I never see what he does with the Lord. You know, like in the morning, or like, and I'm like, do you pray? Do you read your Bible? Because I'm not awake at that time. And so we really had to learn how to
better contextualize that, because the answer is yes. For 18 years, I would leave at 6 a.m. to go meet with my prayer partner.
Yeah, which I also didn't see, but I saw you leave.
Yeah, you did see me leave the house every day. I didn't go to Dunkin' Donuts. I was actually meeting with Joe, and we would pray Monday through Friday from 6 to 7. It was life-changing. But I am a night person too. I can stay up, read, study till 1 a.m. I love night reading, night studying. So she's a super early morning, 5 a.m. person, like her mom. So we would go like, you need to be like me, I need to be like you. But we realized, you know what? Let's just make each other happy instead of trying to make each other holy in that sense. Like, and you know what we mean by that. Contextualize that comment. We do help each other stay.
We do our part, and the Holy Spirit do His part.
Yes.
You will have a much happier marriage if you adopt that principle. The next one is that we practice a life without kids every season, even when our kids were there. So I want to encourage you in this one, because this is a big deal. Is that we talk about having a treasure chest, and we've been depositing into our treasure chest all the way through our marriage, meaning we go out and we go on trips together without the kids. We go on dates together without the kids. We have developed memories. Now our kids are all grown and have their own kids. But we have all these memories and all of these great treasures that we have. Yeah, do not include the kids from all the way through our marriage. And what I've seen so many times is that once the kids grow up and leave the house, that there's nothing there, because you've invested all of your time into your children, which sounds so holy and so right. But how many know God gave you your husband before He gave you your kids? God gave you your wife before He gave you your kids. So you have to develop, and we've built up this treasure chest. And so what happens is that when you have that treasure chest filled up, you can then, when things are going a little hard, or maybe it's a little dry, you can take something out of what you've deposited. And it gives you the stability and the stamina to be able to work through that difficult time. And so now we have, we're empty nesters, and we are having the greatest time of our lives because we have developed that relationship, the friendship. Together, we love being with each other. It wasn't all just about the kids. It wasn't all just about ministry. We have a lot of just marriage stuff. Okay. The next one is you cannot bond with a bitter person. How many know that what's on the inside of you will permeate to the outside?
Yeah, it's so powerful. You cannot bond to a bitter person. So if I'm bitter, I literally become unbondable to us. So we have to make a choice. If we're going to bond, there cannot be bitterness in either one of us to truly bond in the Lord. And I think you're going to talk a little more about this in your session tonight.
Yeah, but there's just an idea of each one of us is responsible for our own selves, right? And so we have to be responsible to really be in tune with what is on the inside of us coming out of us. And I know for myself, I used to be a really negative person. And so I just saw things pessimistically. I saw the glass half empty. He's an idealist. He is like up there all the time, always sees the potential. And I always saw what was wrong with things. And I would always see what needed to be done. And he always thought, and that would be a conflict in our marriage. And it affected every area of my life. Like I was cynical, I was pleasant to people, but just that inner person saw things, and I had a lens of, came through negativity as opposed to positive thinking. And I really had to go to the Lord. He began to reveal things as I would say things. I would begin to realize how negative I was coming across, and I would attract negative people, because how many know when you're negative, you attract. They will find you, right? And that doesn't help your negativity. And I really began to pray and ask the Lord to help me change the way I saw life and the way I saw things. And one of the things I recognize is that, God is not a pessimistic God. He is an optimist. Everything he is, everything he said, his whole nature, everything is positive and everything is optimistic. So that means I did not get that from him. I was not born pessimistic. I learned it. How many know life gives you pessimism? God did not create you to be pessimistic and negative. And so once I realized that, I understood, okay, there's a bad guy in the room. When there's a bad person in the room, it's like you have two ways of dealing with it. You either run and hide, or you grab the bat or the iron and you're going to go after it. And I tend to be that last person, as though I'm going to go after something that I realized there was a bad guy in my inner man that needed to come out, and I began to pray and ask the Lord and the Holy Spirit to change the way I saw things so that I could become more optimistic in my life, so I could see. I had to happen from the inside out. I can't just say, oh, I'm just going to see the glass half full now. I had to really let the Holy Spirit change me. And so I went on this negativity challenge, and I brought all of my women in the church with me on the negativity challenge. And we just went for 1 week, and we said we're going to eliminate all negativity from our lives. And that did not mean our husbands, did not mean our children. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the way you complaining, whining, sarcasm, cynicism, all the things that we have that are part of us. And if you just sit down and think about how you have treated somebody in the last week, you will know whether you're seeing something negatively or positively. And so we began to go through that and hold each other accountable. And I will tell you, the more that we began to empty ourselves of the negativity, the more all of us began to hear from God. We began to be more sensitive to the things of the Spirit. And we were able to change our own culture inside, which then began to change our atmosphere. And so that is something that God has really worked on in my life. And I don't even remember what point I'm on. Okay. So anyway, you understand what I'm saying there. The last two are this. One is, I cannot force you to desire me. I must be desirable. Which means I need to take care of myself. I need to take care of myself physically, emotionally. Like they were talking about, we need to pastor, and we need to be a spouse. We need to start from a place of wholeness. And so if there's those issues in your life, whether it's your health or you need to maybe start your exercise program, or here we are at the beginning of the year starting that diet again, or whatever it is, we need to work on ourselves instead of, trying to change our spouse on that.
It's very profound, the idea that I cannot force you to desire me. I must be desirable. I'm not just talking about physical or sexual, though that is a strong component of our bond, husbands and wives, in this room. But in leadership, I cannot force you to stop feeling something. I can only help you begin to feel something new. You cannot tell someone, stop feeling that way. You have to help them begin to feel something new. And so you give them a new experience in a familiar setting. You could be in the same boardroom with the same team, same business, same problems, and the leader creates in that familiarity a new experience. You create novelty. Through improvisation, you begin to be creative, and you break that cycle of feeling by giving new experiences to people. And in a marriage, I've got to think, am I desirable to my wife as a man? We got all this pressure, man. Hallmark is tough. Hallmark it's on us all the time. What? We have to be what? I have to be that person here? I gotta be a chef. I gotta be from a small town. Where do all these people get their money, by the way, those movies? I got all kinds of issues with that. And then let's give the last one, then we're going to have some fun here in the last 10 minutes.
Equal credit for the life that we built, meaning that we're not here because of everything that Scott's done or everything that I've done. We are a team. We've always been a team. We've pastored together. We've done life together. We've done it. So we realize that we do things as one. We are Scott and Karen. Scott and Karen, that's how people know us.
I've noticed I've noticed often, early and often, over 37 years now pastoring, a trend. When somebody has a moral failure, I notice something. I've noticed something through the years. I always go, that pastor? I've seen him in district council a ton of times. I can't tell you who his spouse is. I tell people, Scott and Karen is our name. People know us as Scott and Karen. They don't know me as Scott Hagan. And by the way, who's your wife? So we practiced over the years. We have a single first name, Scott and Karen Hagan. It's not her and then who you married to. It's him, who you married to. I found that people that have lived mysteriously like that, they tend to be the ones over time. And you're going like, you know what? But the people that have been very living in the light and cultivated at every district council, every event. No, but people rarely see me anywhere, social media, at events. And if she's not with me, she's with me from the very first slide. People know, and then throughout our marriage, now here I'm complimenting myself here, people come up to you and say what to you when they've heard me speak.
That's on our notes. So. He does this to me and he expects me to. I have the answer.
From the heart.
No, people do say this, that, I know all about you because he talks about you all the time. So.
That's what they say. So they know us as Scott and Karen. Okay, hey, have you ever noticed how the Bible has a very interesting way of talking about marriage. There is the legal side, and then there's the lurid side. I don't mean lurid as in sinful lurid, but righteously lurid way. Now, here's what Moses,
Moses.
You read what Moses says.
So in Deuteronomy 22, this is what Moses said about marriage. If a man meets a virgin who is not betrothed and seizes her and lies with her, and they are found, then the man who lays with her shall give to the father of a young woman 50 shekels of silver.
It's like
inspiring.
A legal. The cop has read that to you. The judge has read. But here's how Solomon talks about marriage. How beautiful and pleasant you are, O loved one, with all your delights. Your stature is like a palm tree, and your breasts are like clusters. I say, I will climb the palm tree and lay hold of its fruit. That's how Solomon talks about this.
But then Moses says, and she shall be his wife because he has violated her. He may not divorce her all of his days.
But then Solomon goes on to say, oh, may your breasts be like clusters of the vine. Are the students in here?
Yeah.
Probably need to hit that. Oh, may your breasts be like clusters of the vine, and the scent of your breath like apples in your mouth, like the best wine. It goes down smoothly for my beloved, gliding over lips and teeth. I am my beloved's, and his desire is for me. Would the Bible make up its mind? Are we talking about a legal relationship or a lurid, wonderful this other thing? It's both of these. Isn't it fascinating that marriage is addressed in such an array or just a polar opposite way in Scripture? And so, yeah, there's commitment during dry times, difficult times. I want to close this session, because we're going to take a break here in a minute. 6 reasons why couples go the distance. Here's 6 reasons. These are not from a book. This is just as we have looked. Here's 6 reasons why couples go the distance. You do the first one.
They like each other.
That's it. They like each other.
I can love you, but I really don't like you right now.
Yeah, it can be all legal, and there's no Solomon in there. There's no Song of Solomon. There's just the law of Moses, and you have to like each other.
I know this is deep stuff. I know
Yes.
you really need to write that down, because sometimes it's so simplistic that we forget it.
Yeah.
Right?
And we have been practicing empty nesting since the day we were married. When we had 4 little kids, we practiced empty nesting, which means, again, what Karen mentioned, we have cultivated, we told our kids all the time, hey, Mom and I are going on a date tonight. You are not going. We're going on a trip without you. Without you, let it go. You're not going. No, I'm going out with my girlfriend tonight. Mama, you're going to have a babysitter. She's mean. And we won't care. Because Mom and I are going out on the town tonight. And they were like, but they picked up on something. Yeah. And now the 4 kids are married, and they're off to a good start in their marriages, and they're replicating some of these fun little nuances. They like each other. Here's number 2. They have no plan B. Karen and I don't have a plan B. When I would feel that yell or that intensity rising, I go, something would, and I think here's the key. We have mastered the narrow art of non-escalation. We've mastered the marital art of non-escalation. We see all of our friends who've pastored for years. People do not practice that, and everything escalates. The tone escalates, the intensity, and then you're yelling, and now you can't even remember what the problem was. You've created 2nd, 3rd, and 4th tier problems by your response. Then you're saying, I've never been happy. Really? 3, 4, you've never been happy? You start saying stuff that's not true in your anger because it escalates. So because we have no plan B, it loses its steam. Like, you know what? This isn't worth it. We love each other. We're crazy about each other. And we're going to be back in this place of being crazy about it. So let's just stay in that space. We talk that way to ourselves.
And we talk about, we are too invested in this. When you go through that struggle, you know what? We have so much investment in it. Why would we want to mess that up? Like, is it really greener on the other side? No. Not when you have so much investment into a relationship. So.
And then you highlighted the 3rd one already. The best idea always wins. Best idea wins. That's better counseling. That's a better idea, sweet. And we practice this with our kids. You know, we let them come up with ideas, and we're going to be done in 2 minutes. You know, if we would have a challenge in our family when the kids are little, we would do a huddle cuddle. What's a huddle cuddle? Huddle cuddle is where, we have 4 little kids around the table, like from age 3 to 8, and somebody said something, and now we got a problem. Okay, forks down, huddle, we'd go in the middle of the family room, and Mom and I would get on our knees like this. Snap, crackle, pop right there. Kids would all be standing there, and then we would start the meeting. I said, we can't start the meeting until all of our foreheads are touching. So we put our heads together, and all 6 of us are in a meeting now, and we can't start it till everybody's touching foreheads. And you got this tight little circle, you know, the smell of peanut butter, Doritos, and everyone talking out. But we'd have a huddle call, and we would say, listen, the Lord has called our family to be leaders. And whether you like it or not, you're born as a leader. You're Hagan, and we have to be examples for leaders. And you're going to be best friends for the rest of your life. There's no plan B here, kids. We would say that to our kids. And then we let kids talk. And the kids may come up with an idea best for the family. Best idea wins, not dad's idea because I'm dad, I'm at the top of the flow chart. That's garbage. That's thinking in an isolated, authoritarian hierarchy way, and that's the wrong kind of patriarch. Okay? We think together, and best idea, when the kids see dad submit to mom's idea and change his mind, like, that's a better idea, sweetheart. Oh, it just did something wonderful. Okay, number 4.
They never attach too much meaning to a bad day.
They never attach too much meaning to a bad day.
You're going to have bad days. Your kids are going to argue. Our kids all argue because they were all leaders and they were trying to lead each other. Nobody wanted to follow. So we had a lot of argument in our house, the kids. And so we really had to teach them and train them to...
You're going to have a bad day with your money. You're going to bounce a check. And I know none of our students know what a checkbook is. There was a thing called an abacus. It's usually how we count money. We barter with meat and vegetables. But you're going to bounce a check. You're going to have sex that is not exhilarating. It's going to be seasons it's dry and not there like you remember. And all of those things, we start putting currency on that. And I think smart couples who go the distance understand that a bad day is like Monopoly money. Don't put currency on it. It's a bad day. Put a bad money. And we're in a season, a little tough right now. Our 30s was the toughest because we're raising small kids, man. Our 30s were like, we were planting a church, 4 small kids, and we barely had time to kiss. And when we did, it was like, so we had, even decades were tough in the marriage. Don't write it out. And then the last one is, they build memories instead of keeping records. We really have seen this practice in couples that go the distance. They build memories instead of keeping records. They build memories, we don't keep records. And lastly, here's your nerd word in closing. They practice autopoiesis. Autopoiesis. Autopoiesis is a great word. Autopoietic is the practice of development of self-growth. Now, it's a biological term for cell replication, a cell being able to multiply to a new cell. Social scientists started adopting it in the 60s as an educational term for the ability for self-learning. So meaning that I sit in the classroom, I learn from you the proven life to the promising life you're teaching me. But what you've taught me is more than simply how to be in a room with a wise mentor to teach me. You've taught me how to think on my own and grow without being monitored. I believe in coaching. I'm a university president. I believe in that setting. But if I don't teach you to develop yourself without being watched, so autopoiesis is the ability of replication. You're replicating growth without anybody being around and without anybody seeing you, even your spouse. I'm not going to stand with Karen before Jesus. I'm going to stand by myself before the Lord. I have to practice autopoietic living, meaning I can self-replicate character in my life. We can in our marriage without somebody constantly sitting there telling us what to do. Couples that go the distance are couples that grow in their marriage without having to be sitting in the conference or at the retreat. Now, we love all that stuff. but we can also practice just driving down the car. We feel this. You know, we had a little conversation yesterday about something, and I felt that thing, like, okay, well, I'll take a little jab at you for jabbing me, you know, because I was going to buy a Nebraska hoodie.
And I was rolling my eyes, girls, you know what that means.
Like she goes, if you buy one more thing, from Team, you don't even follow. I said, but I need that one. It's so that red, it's unbelievable. And then, so I can tell she was like not giving me the approval. So I even go, well, I don't care if you, I'm wearing my hoodie, and I'm gonna buy you one. Put it on. But we were able to. I was able to not buy the hoodie, believing that one day someone will give me one. But that feeling, that tweak, that angst, that little stupid thing, that subtlety, I was able to arrest it, be whimsical, which is you gotta be whimsical about it. And then we made that quick self-adjustment, that conversation. It didn't escalate, and it became nothing. I know people that moves into a bad month. And so, okay, we're